The police officer snatched the blue sapphire bracelet from Heather's hands. "That's not yours," he snapped, his accusing stare unwavering. Security cameras caught everything. Heather stood speechless in the fancy jewelry store, clutching her purse as everyone stared. What corrupt Officer Donovan didn't know was that Malcolm Reed, watching quietly from across the room, wasn't just a store employee. He was Heather's husband and the police chief conducting a secret investigation. Heather Reed smoothed her gray cardigan as she looked at herself in the hallway mirror at home. At 42, she carried herself with the quiet dignity that came from years of teaching third graders. Her straight blonde bob framed a face that usually smiled easily, though today her blue eyes showed some worry. "You sure you don't want me to come along?" Malcolm called from his study, papers scattered across his desk. As police chief, his workload never seemed to lessen, even on weekends. "It's just a gift for Vanessa's retirement," Heather replied, adjusting her simple pearl earrings. After 30 years of teaching, she deserves something special from the staff. Malcolm emerged from his office, his salt and pepper hair neatly combed, his strong build obvious even in casual clothes. "All right, but remember, Blackwell's fine jewelry has been getting some complaints lately. Customers claiming items went missing." Heather smiled. Malcolm's protective instincts never turned off, even after 15 years of marriage. "I'm just going to be in and out. Besides, what could possibly happen to a school teacher buying a bracelet?" Malcolm's expression remained serious. "I'm actually heading that way myself. There's something about those complaints that doesn't add up." The officer who responded to each call was the same guy, Tyler Donovan. "Your new transfer from the West Side precinct?" Heather asked, gathering her purse. "Something about him doesn't sit right with me," Malcolm admitted. "I'm going undercover to observe him. He doesn't know what I look like. I've been working from the East office since he arrived." Heather kissed him on the cheek. "My husband, the detective. I'll be careful not to blow your cover if I see you." As she drove to the jewelry store, Heather hummed along to the oldie station. Teaching had been her calling for over 20 years, and gestures like this, pooling money with other teachers to buy Vanessa something special, were part of what made their small community feel like family. Blackwell's fine jewelry stood at the center of the upscale shopping plaza, its elegant window displays gleaming under perfectly positioned lights. Heather checked her appearance one last time in the car mirror. Simple white blouse under her light gray cardigan, understated makeup. Nothing about her screamed, suspicious character. With a little laugh at her own nervousness, she grabbed her purse and went inside. The moment the door closed behind her, the air changed, cooler, hushed, fragranced with subtle notes of luxury. Heather took a deep breath and approached the counter, unaware that this simple errand was about to turn her ordinary day into something far more dangerous. Crystal chandeliers cast a warm glow over glass display cases filled with glittering gems. Heather felt slightly out of place among the opulence but reminded herself she was a paying customer like anyone else. She approached a display of bracelets, remembering that Vanessa had always admired blue stones. "May I help you?" The voice belonged to an older man with thinning hair and wire-rimmed glasses. His name tag read, Preston Blackwell, Manager. "Yes, I'm looking for a retirement gift. Something with sapphires, perhaps." Heather smiled warmly. Blackwell's gaze swept over her, lingering briefly on her modest clothes before his expression shifted subtly. "Of course. We have several pieces that might interest you." His tone carried a hint of skepticism that Heather chose to ignore. As Blackwell guided her to a display case, Heather noticed other employees assisting customers. Her eyes briefly met those of a man in a black vest and tie, who seemed to be arranging watches in a nearby case. Something about him seemed familiar, but she quickly looked away, remembering Malcolm's undercover operation. "These are our sapphire pieces," Blackwell explained, unlocking a case. He removed a stunning bracelet with deep blue stones set in white gold. "This is one of our finest, 14 genuine sapphires with diamond accents. May I?" He gestured to her wrist. Heather nodded, extending her arm. The bracelet was beautiful, catching the light as Blackwell fastened it. "It's gorgeous. How much is it? 8,500, Blackwell replied, watching her reaction closely. Heather carefully kept her expression neutral despite her surprise at the price. The teachers had collected nearly 3,000. She'd need to look at something more modest. Perhaps something simpler, she suggested gently. Blackwell's smile tightened almost imperceptibly. Of course. Not everyone appreciates fine jewelry. He returned the bracelet to its display, locking the case. Heather felt a flicker of annoyance at his condescension but maintained her composure. I'm looking for quality, just within a particular budget. As Blackwell reluctantly showed her more affordable options, the door chimed. Heather glanced up to see a uniformed police officer entering, tall and broad-shouldered with close-cropped brown hair. He radiated authority as he surveyed the store. Officer Donovan, Blackwell acknowledged, suddenly more animated. Just doing your usual security check. Just keeping an eye on things, the officer replied, his gaze sweeping the store before settling on Heather. Something in his expression made her uneasy. Heather selected a simpler silver and sapphire bracelet priced at their budget. This one would be perfect. I'll take it. While Blackwell processed her credit card, Heather noticed Officer Donovan moving closer, watching her with unusual intensity. She shifted uncomfortably, double-checking that she had returned the expensive bracelet to Blackwell. Receipt and gift box, Blackwell said, sliding them across the counter. Will there be anything else? No, thank you. This is perfect. Heather placed the small bag in her purse. She had barely taken 2 steps toward the exit when Officer Donovan moved into her path. Excuse me, ma'am, but I need to check your purse. His tone was authoritative, his expression unyielding. Heather blinked in surprise. Sorry, security protocol. We've had several thefts recently. His hand was already extended, waiting. Heather felt her heart racing but had nothing to hide. She handed over her purse, aware that other customers were now watching with interest, including the man in the black vest who had moved slightly closer. Officer Donovan rummaged through her bag, then triumphantly pulled out a glittering object, the expensive sapphire bracelet she had tried on earlier. What? Heather gasped. That's not mine. Then how did it end up in your purse? Officer Donovan demanded, holding the bracelet up so everyone could see. I don't know. I didn't take it. Heather felt her face burning with embarrassment and confusion. Blackwell approached, his expression a mixture of disappointment and accusation. I knew something wasn't right when you came in, he said loudly enough for everyone to hear. People like you always think you can get away with it. People like me? Heather echoed incredulously. I'm a school teacher. I would never steal anything. Officer Donovan gripped her arm firmly. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As Donovan continued reciting her rights, Heather caught sight of the man in the black vest. For just a moment, his eyes met hers, and in that brief connection, she recognized the steely determination of her husband. This is ridiculous, Heather protested as Officer Donovan secured the bracelet in an evidence bag. I didn't steal anything. The other customers had backed away, forming a loose circle around the unfolding drama. Their expressions ranged from shock to poorly concealed fascination. Nothing like a midday crime to break the monotony of shopping. Security cameras don't lie, ma'am, Donovan replied, his voice carrying through the hushed store. And neither does the evidence in your purse. Heather fought to keep her composure as panic threatened to overwhelm her. There must be a mistake. I handed that bracelet back to Mr. Blackwell. Everyone saw me. Blackwell shook his head slowly, the picture of regretful authority. I'm afraid not. I showed you several pieces, but this particular one, he gestured to the bagged bracelet, never made it back to the display case. Heather's mind raced. She knew with absolute certainty she hadn't taken the bracelet, which meant only one thing. Someone had planted it in her purse. But who? And why? I want to see the security footage, she demanded, straightening her shoulders. Years of maintaining order in a classroom of 8-year-olds had taught her something about projecting confidence even when shaken. Officer Donovan smirked. "That can be arranged at the station." He turned to Blackwell. "Will you be pressing charges?" "Absolutely," Blackwell replied without hesitation. "This is exactly what we discussed earlier about maintaining zero tolerance." The odd phrasing caught Heather's attention. What had they discussed earlier? Before she could contemplate this further, Donovan was gripping her elbow, steering her toward the door. "Wait," she said, pulling back slightly. "I need to make a phone call." "At the station," Donovan repeated, his grip tightening just enough to communicate that resistance was futile. As they moved toward the exit, Heather noticed the man in the black vest had disappeared. Where had Malcolm gone? Had he witnessed what happened? Surely he would intervene. But no one stepped forward as Donovan led her out of the store and toward his patrol car parked prominently in front. The midday sun felt harsh after the dimly lit interior of the jewelry store, and Heather squinted, suddenly aware of how public this humiliation was becoming. "Watch your head," Donovan instructed mechanically as he guided her into the back seat. Through the window, Heather could see Blackwell watching from the store entrance, a satisfied expression on his face. Something about the way he and Donovan had interacted nagged at her. There was a familiarity there, a practiced rhythm to their exchange that suggested this wasn't their first time handling such a situation. As Donovan settled into the driver's seat, she caught his eyes in the rearview mirror. There was something there. Not the righteous determination of an officer upholding the law, but something colder, calculating. "Officer Donovan," she began carefully, "is there anything I can say to convince you that I didn't steal that bracelet?" His eyes hardened. "Save it for the judge, lady. People like you are all the same. Think you're entitled to take whatever you want." "People like me. What does that mean?" Heather pressed, indignation temporarily overriding her fear. "Respectable types," he sneered. "Acting all innocent while your hands are in the cookie jar." As the patrol car pulled away from the curb, Heather fought back tears. How had a simple shopping trip turned into this nightmare? Where was Malcolm? And most importantly, how was she going to prove her innocence when the evidence had been so neatly arranged against her? She didn't realize it yet, but the trap that had been set for her was about to spring shut on the trappers themselves. Malcolm Reed had witnessed the entire scene from his position near the watch display. Years of police work had trained him to appear casual while missing nothing, and today those skills served him well. The moment Heather had walked into the store, he'd felt a jolt of concern. This complicated things, but perhaps it would also provide the perfect opportunity. For weeks, he'd been tracking a pattern of suspicious theft reports at Blackwell's fine jewelry. The same officer responding each time, the same manager filing reports, the same insurance claims being processed without question, and most tellingly, security footage that conveniently malfunctioned during critical moments. When Donovan led Heather outside, Malcolm moved swiftly, slipping into the back office. He accessed the security system, just as he'd done earlier that morning when he had installed his own hidden cameras throughout the store. The official monitors showed exactly what he expected, Heather appearing to pocket the bracelet while Blackwell was distracted. A perfect setup. But Malcolm's hidden cameras told a different story. From an angle invisible to the store's security system, they had captured Blackwell carefully sliding the bracelet into Heather's open purse while directing her attention to another display. The footage also showed a brief nod exchanged between Blackwell and Donovan just before the officer had approached Heather. Malcolm pulled out his phone and placed a call. "Chief Reed here. Initiate Protocol 117. Target location is Blackwell's fine jewelry. Suspects are in play." He paused, listening. "Yes, there has been a development. They've just framed my wife." Another pause. "No, this is exactly what we needed. The evidence is clear now. Officer Donovan is taking her to the station. Have Thornton intercept before booking. I'll handle things here." Ending the call, Malcolm accessed his tablet, downloading the footage from both the store system and his hidden cameras. He had suspected Donovan was corrupt, but he'd needed irrefutable evidence. Now he had it, along with proof of Blackwell's involvement. As Malcolm prepared to confront Blackwell, he thought of Heather, frightened, confused, being led away in humiliation. His jaw tightened. Donovan would pay for that, through proper legal channels. As police chief, Malcolm had always insisted his officers uphold the highest standards. Those who betrayed the badge deserved the fullest punishment available. He pocketed the tablet and straightened his tie. Time to close the trap. In his 25 years of law enforcement, Malcolm had learned that the most satisfying arrests were those where the criminals never saw justice coming until it was too late to escape. Heather sat alone in the interview room, the stark fluorescent lighting highlighting the institutional gray walls. She'd refused to cry, refused to show weakness, but inside her emotions churned between fear, anger, and confusion. How long had she been here? An hour. 2. The door swung open, and a tall woman with cropped gray hair entered carrying a file folder. She wore a detective's badge clipped to her belt. "Mrs. Reed, I'm Detective Navarro. I understand there's been some confusion today." Heather's hopes rose cautiously. "That's putting it mildly. I've been falsely accused of theft, but no one will listen to me." Navarro sat down across from her. "Actually, Mrs. Reed, I'm here to inform you that you're free to go. No charges will be filed against you." "What?" Heather blinked in surprise. "I don't understand." Officer Donovan was so certain. "Officer Donovan has been relieved of duty pending an investigation," Navarro stated flatly. "We have reason to believe he was involved in a criminal conspiracy with Preston Blackwell." Before Heather could process this information, the door opened again. Malcolm walked in, still wearing the black vest from the jewelry store, his face a mixture of concern and relief. "Heather," he said, moving quickly to her side. "Are you all right?" "Malcolm, what's happening?" Heather stood, accepting his embrace. Detective Navarro cleared her throat. "Chief Reed has been conducting an internal investigation into Officer Donovan for the past month. We had suspicions about a potential insurance fraud scheme involving Donovan and Blackwell, but we needed concrete evidence." "You knew?" Heather pulled back to look at her husband. "You knew this might happen?" Malcolm's face was grave. "I never imagined they would target you, Heather. I was at the store to observe Donovan's routine when you walked in." He shook his head. "It complicated things, but it also gave us the perfect opportunity to catch them in the act." Heather slowly sank back into her chair as the pieces fell into place. "The cameras you mentioned, complaints about missing items?" "Exactly," Malcolm nodded to Navarro, who slid a tablet across the table. "Watch this." The screen showed split footage, the official security camera on one side, Malcolm's hidden camera on the other. Heather watched in disbelief as the official footage showed her apparently slipping the bracelet into her purse. But Malcolm's camera revealed the truth, Blackwell carefully placing the bracelet there while directing her attention elsewhere. "We've had our eye on Donovan since he transferred in," Navarro explained. "Several complaints about his conduct had surfaced in his previous precinct, but nothing concrete enough for charges. When similar patterns started emerging here, Chief Reed decided to investigate personally." "The scheme was elegant in its simplicity," Malcolm continued. "Blackwell would identify a target, usually someone who looked like they didn't belong in a high-end jewelry store." "Someone like me," Heather said quietly. Malcolm nodded grimly. "Blackwell would plant an expensive piece on them. Donovan, who was conveniently always nearby, would discover the theft. They'd press charges, file insurance claims, but then the items would mysteriously reappear in inventory after the insurance paid out." "They've done this before?" Heather asked, appalled. "At least 7 times that we've confirmed," Navarro replied. "But previous victims were too intimidated or embarrassed to fight the charges effectively. Most accepted plea deals. So I was just convenient." Heather struggled to process it all. "You were supposed to be another statistic," Malcolm said, his voice tight with controlled anger. "Another case file, another insurance payout. But they made one critical mistake. They chose the wife of the police chief," Heather finished, a hint of irony in her voice. They chose a woman who was innocent, Malcolm corrected her gently. The fact that you're my wife just meant I could ensure justice moved swiftly. Navarro stood. Mrs. Reed, we'll need a formal statement from you, but that can wait until tomorrow. Right now, I imagine you'd like to go home. As they prepared to leave, Heather paused. What happened to Officer Donovan and Mr. Blackwell? They're both in custody, Navarro answered. When Donovan brought you in, he walked right into our trap. As for Blackwell, Chief Reed personally placed him under arrest at the store. The evidence is overwhelming. Outside the station, the late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the parking lot. Heather took a deep breath of fresh air, letting the reality of her ordeal, and her vindication, sink in. I'm sorry you got caught in the middle of this, Malcolm said, his arm around her shoulders. Heather looked up at him, her composure fully regained. Don't be. I'm not just the police chief's wife, remember? I'm also the woman who helps take down corrupt officers. 2 weeks later, Heather stood before her third-grade class, explaining the importance of honesty as part of their character education curriculum. The irony wasn't lost on her, how her own experience had become a powerful teaching tool. The aftermath of the jewelry store incident had been swift and public. Local news had covered the arrests of Officer Donovan and Preston Blackwell, highlighting the courage of the everyday citizen who helped expose their scheme. Malcolm had ensured Heather's name was kept out of the reports, protecting her privacy while still allowing the truth to come to light. The investigation had uncovered 7 previous victims, ordinary people who had been falsely accused, pressured into settlements, and left with criminal records for crimes they never committed. Now those records were being expunged, reputations restored by the same justice system that had failed them initially. As for Heather, she had emerged from the experience with renewed appreciation for her husband's work and a deeper understanding of how privilege and power could be wielded for good or for ill. Mrs. Reed. A small voice pulled her from her thoughts. Is it true that bad people always get caught? Heather considered the question carefully. Not always, she admitted. But that's why it's so important for good people to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. Justice isn't automatic. It requires courage and perseverance. Just like teaching third grade, she thought with a smile.